So the original topic I wanted to talk about is, do we think games are getting better, or have we reached the technology plateau? I would be of the opinion, and I think this is fairly well supported from the evidence, I don't think things are getting much better. And my citation for that would be a game we've played a lot recently in Skyrim. Skyrim came out almost 15 years ago. And like the hardware has upgraded over time. Like Skyrim originally came out, I think, for like PS3. And like it is still modern playable on PS5. It looks fine. The gameplay is good. I don't think Elder Scrolls 6 is ever coming out. So, and if it does, I don't think it's going to be as good as Skyrim. It's my hot take. So like, are we at the technology plateau? Like, do we reasonably expect games to like look better? Because like we had a lot of console generations where it was like, oh, games were coming out regularly and it just looked better and better and better and better and better. And now I kind of feel like we've hit the point where I'm like, the fidelity's high, and if we get higher, I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, like, I feel like as far as technology goes, I mean, really all we're cranking into things at this point is pixel density and efficiency, right? Because we can make photorealistic games, and we can make games that look in a lot of ways. I mean, the great thing about video games is that without being too stylized, you can look better than real life, because real life has, you know, there's a lot of really weird things that happen in nature, and you can kind of like take a lot of those things out, or make like shadows look better, or like bloom look better, or there's a lot of things you can just make look better, and that's a stylized thing. Like, I don't know if it looks better than real life, but you know what I mean. And
it's like
just,
wedding photographs. Like,
yeah,
you can sort of make it look like better than real life.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it doesn't replace the experience, but you know, so it's like we have that with a lot of not cyberpunk base game, but like cyberpunk mods are crazy. Like you can get it looking insane. And really the game right now is, because, you know, we can hit photoreal, but it's how do you make photoreal more efficient? And how do you make that accessible to everybody? But it also feels like with modern, so with things like Unity, we're not really trying to actually make those things efficient. Like, it doesn't feel like those things are actually attainable to everybody. It feels like you still need to have to buy, you know, the RTX 870, 90,000, whatever, XTX 97 to be able to actually play these things and like at any reasonable pace. But it feels like that's what all developers are using in their dev kits. Whereas the rest of us with like, you know, mid-range PCs are just struggling on medium settings for some of these games. But I don't feel like there's anywhere to go with games. And I feel like maybe that's why we're seeing like a resurgence in indie games the last couple years, because people are kind of tired of like chasing the, you know, Crysis 3 photorealistic whatever, you know. And we're going back to, oh wait, maybe video games are an art form. Maybe it shouldn't look like real life. Maybe it should have its own identity. Maybe we don't need to mimic real life. And I think maybe there's something to be said about that.
I think the difference, it's like, I agree with you on some things, but I will say, I think a AA team or like a well-funded indie team could make The Last of Us now in a way that a well-funded indie team or a AA team could not have made The Last of Us in 2013 or whenever The Last of Us came out.
Sure.
Like, I think that like games like Clara Obscura are like showing that you can do AAA quality with less resources. And I think that's the biggest leap forward in technology that we're going to see, where like people are going to be able to make Red Dead 2 with 1/10 of the manpower. The dev tools are going to streamline that labor. That's, I guess, how I see the technology progressing so much. And I think we've seen that as like AAA games don't necessarily have the same, like there are some extraordinarily high production games out there, like Death Stranding 2 I think was like really, really noticeable for its production quality. But like even like Ghost of Yotei compared to like Ghost of Tsushima, like Ghost of Yotei looks good and like looks better specifically, but it definitely wasn't like a generational leap. I think Ghost of Tsushima was on the PS4.
Yeah,
Like
I think so.
Yeah. And
Or
so, like,
no, was it early PS5?
I don't think, at the very least, I don't think it's a PS5 exclusive. I think if you have a PlayStation 4, you can play Ghost of Tsushima. Is that true?
Yep, you're right. I had to look that up because I'm like, is it that old? Yeah.
No, and so I think like even though the games aren't looking better, I think like there will be denser crowds, or there will be more characters on screen at the same time having unique animations. I think like Spider-Man 2 to Spider-Man, like the crowds are more responsive on the ground. Spider-Man 2 does look a little bit better, but I think the systems involved are more complicated. And so yeah, I don't know. I think that like the visual presentation, I do not see that getting much better, because I think, like Brett said, we are at photoreal. And pretty soon, like, consoles are going to be able to play photoreal. Like, I don't think a PS5 would be powerful enough to do all the things that you need to get cyberpunk looking. But I think the next generation will just be that powerful to make something as complicated as cyberpunk run smooth and be photoreal at the same time. But yeah, I think it's more going to be about like seeing smaller teams accomplish bigger games on smaller budgets. And I think that's the biggest thing that technology is going to accomplish. And I think a lot of that happens on the software side. Things like nanite is a buzzword that I've heard that like lets you scale the resolution a lot quicker for things that are further away versus things that are closer, so it increases performance. And hopefully obviously it's not good that the graphics cards for like the entire computing industry as well as gaming are astronomically expensive right now. But if there could be a silver lining, I think it would be that it pressures developers to optimize their games in ways that they might not have been thinking about prior to thinking about that. People will, even after prices come down, people like might not want to spend that much, on this hardware if games are starting to be optimized, to perform better. So that's like on that software side, that's the thing that makes me more excited. I don't know, like maybe, like, do you think that there's a future where like people are going to be like into gaming as a hobby and not own a device that does computing? Like, I think Xbox, you can stream to your TV without a PC or an Xbox.
Yeah, you can do that with Game Pass, and there is also there's another system. I don't remember what it's is it GeForce Now or something similar, where they allow you to basically rent out computing space, right? So you pay a monthly fee for like a cloud service, and then you connect to the cloud, and you basically, I don't know if this is correct, but I think it is based on someone I know who has paid for it, where you can pay in tiers. So it's like Netflix, where you can do a base subscription, and that basically gets you like net computing power. And then as you go, you can get basically better systems to like basically use. You can get more computing power to use for those games. So you can pay more to have better fidelity. And there are a lot of developers, or there's a lot of companies, I mean, Amazon is one of them, that really thinks that is just going to be like there's no more consoles after this. It's just, we're all going to pay for cloud computing, and there's going to be companies that are hoarding cloud space, and they are going to have all the computing systems so that you don't have to. And I don't like that. Just because I like to own my things. Like I don't want all of my things to be locked up in the cloud and locked up in some billionaire's pocket. Like, I want to own my computer, and I want to own my games. So that way, if the internet ever dies and we're in post-apocalyptia, but I have a battery and my computer, I can still play KOTOR,
But do you think that's realistic? Like, do you think that Amazon, because I think Microsoft is going really hard into that as well, in like the This Is an Xbox campaign, where they're doing like, this is an Xbox, whatever. And it's basically anything with a screen can play a game, because it's, do you think that's like a realistic version of the future of video games?
I don't
just see
because
why, like, it couldn't be. Okay. So different.
That's two opposite answers.
Yeah.
No, that's fair.
So,
That's
like-
fair. Go, Seth.
So Dempsey, your question was anything that has a screen could be a computer or like a console.
Well, so Xbox marketing campaign, like from a year ago or whatever, was like, this is an Xbox. And it was like someone's smartphone, someone's tablet, someone's TV. Like, so the idea was like anything with a screen could be an Xbox because the computing happens somewhere else anyways.
I mean, obviously there's like logistical issues to that. But I guess it is an interesting like side question on like, is the technology plateauing, right? Is to say that they're actually, well, like, yes for the consumer, but no for the enterprise level.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, my only thought about that would be, I think the rise of AI data centers and the pushback against that would be the argument against something like that becoming more widespread. Because, sure, like cloud computing could do all of that, but you need the infrastructure to make it happen. All of the infrastructure is currently going towards AI development in the first place, and people don't like these data centers being built in their communities. And the easiest way to get something like that to happen on low latency is you're going to need servers like in people's communities.
Sure.
So, I mean, I think it's a cool idea, but like, didn't like Google Stadia do that and it kind of sucked?
That's what I was going to bring up. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, Google Stadia had that, like, was the entirety of their model. And they had like a really, like, their vision of it was like you can watch a trailer on YouTube and then like be instantly into the demo of a game. And like this really like seamless integration between like Google, I guess like Google products and video games.
Sure.
And like there is some, like, there's a part of me that's like, that's a really stupid idea. That's not how people want to play video games. They want to play video games. They make it a ritual. They make it a part of their day. They want to go to a machine that they feel like they have some ownership of, that it fits in the aesthetic of their house, or it is part of the community that they're a part of. Like, I have a PlayStation hat on right now, and like that's a part of the, like, when I'm online, I like to see what people think about PlayStation, and so it's like part of the joy, you know. Having a quote unquote setup, I think, is part of the, like, a really important part of gaming culture. And like the idea that Google's going to be like, no, everything's just going to happen on like you and your laptop and that's it. I don't know, that, like, there's a part of me that like, looks at that and like, that's really stupid and out of touch. But there's also a part of me that like looks at Netflix and streaming, and like the majority of movies that people are watching are no longer being played locally. And
it's true.
And I think, like, I don't know if video games are that much different, where like as soon as people who are more casual about games, that this cloud streaming service becomes like available and normalized, if then that'll bleed over to gaming enthusiasts, or, you know, people who you know, spend more time in the hobby. I don't know.
I still think my issue is like the latency part of it, because I mean, like, look at, for example, and this is an extreme example, like the competitive Smash Bros community, where they talk about like individual frames of input lag and how that's different between playing on a CRT versus on like modern plasma screen TVs. So everybody only plays on CRTs because it has the lowest input lag possible. And like, there's just not going to be ways around the input lag issue for like cloud computing and like cloud gaming.
Yeah,
and it didn't work with Stadia, but like, I still think the idea of hey, like the technological, and you mentioned this earlier, and I wanted to say something about it, I just didn't get it in. But like the technological improvements not coming from like graphical fidelity, but coming in like how games are able to like handle different aspects. I was thinking of like Vampire Survivors. Feels like a game that probably would not have been doable 10, 15 years ago, just because like the processing power for like handling all these enemies would have been tough. But like graphically, it could have been done 10 or 15 years ago. There's nothing stopping that. And like, I don't want to get too much back into the whole like fidelity conversation, but I was also thinking like, I think it's interesting that the thing that I desire now in a game is not better graphic fidelity, but is kind of like interesting style.
Sure.
Like I saw a game recently that caught my attention because it has like PS1 style graphics or like PS2 style graphics. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Like there's not a lot of games being designed that like look like PS2 games as like an intentional aesthetic. And that's has nothing to do with like the graphic fidelity. That has everything to do with nostalgia, really. But
sure. You should play more PS1. That's a whole genre, PS1 style horror games.
I don't like horror games though. That's not the vibe. This was a fishing game.
Just play Arctic Eggs.
I feel like
Arctic Eggs is the perfect game. It's PS1 style. You flip eggs. It's so sick.
Oh, good.
So the question of if games. So I would say in general, I am very optimistic about the future of games. I think as the tradition of games gets stronger, we build a more robust vocabulary. I think more teams are going to have access to make more interesting games. So that's one of my answers. And like in the same way that like you can have low budget sci-fi films like The Creator that look just as good as a Marvel movie, because Adobe Premiere does, in the same way that like indie movies look way better now than they did 10, 15 years ago. I think it's the same thing with video games. My biggest fear with games is the loss, like with games, as far as like if they get better or not. My biggest fear is the loss of institutional knowledge. So like when Quantic Dream can no longer work for Sony and make more like Detroit Become Human style games and has to make like a live service shooter to keep themselves afloat, and then the Star Wars Eclipse game might not come out. That's like Quantic Dreams were like the best people at making that kind of game. And you have all these people who know how to make that kind of game, and they can't make that kind of game anymore. And I think we have that's one of the things that really scared me about Sony's live service push. Like the idea of like taking Naughty Dog and forcing them to make like a live service game, for example. Like all that institutional knowledge to make really good cinematic single player games exist in the experience of people who work at Naughty Dog. And that institutional knowledge is only valuable if those people get to stay at the company and get to help build processes that build better games in the future. But like if you're taking these places that have all of these resources and shutting studios down, making them support studios for like Battlefield or whatever, or like making them make games that they're not enthusiastic about, I think that the traditions that we are hoping get built up as really strong die from the fragmentation of institutional knowledge. And so in my opinion, that's the biggest threat to the quality of video games in the future.
Well, and I think too, I mean, without that sort of pressure from like stakeholders and these like billion-dollar companies, whatever, we also wouldn't have gotten Clair Obscur, right? Because Clair Obscur is some ex-Ubisoft people who were tired of making, Assassin's Creed 87, The Dark Butthole, and they decided to go make a game that was really interesting and something that they were really passionate about that maybe someone at Ubisoft wouldn't have allowed them to make because they had to hit certain numbers, they had to make these certain series, they had to do this and that. And so sure. I think it's kind of also one of those things where I agree that, a lot of these companies and a lot of the way that we are currently making games, it feels very soulless. But there has to be a point where you see success stories of people leaving these giant companies because of those reasons and making games that are just as good or better as the games that they were making before, because they're actually allowed to follow their passions and make things that mean something to them. I think that eventually the system has to break, right? Like eventually we're going to have enough of these situations where the good developers are leaving the big companies and the big companies they're basically destitute and don't have anyone because they're forcing everyone out. Because everyone wants to, they got into creating games because they wanted to be creative and they wanted to make things that are fun and not just, the next Overwatch or the next Marvel Rivals. So, yeah, I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, but I think I like the idea of large studios being the patrons for games specifically that take a lot of capital. Like, I think Clara Obscura is an interesting example because by AAA standards, that did not take a lot of capital. But for a game like God of War, which is Santa Monica owned by Sony, that is going to be like $150, $200 million game. And the fact that the last thing that Santa Monica was working on is a canceled live service God of War game. Like, there is no version of people leaving Sony Santa Monica and making a God of War level game just because they're not going to have the $200 million it takes to make that kind of cinematic experience. And so it's just up to Sony to allow these people to use the institutional knowledge in ways that are unique to these organizations that have such high capital investment. I think the only one that has done that, at least to my knowledge, maybe there's a bunch, but is Kojima, where Kojima was able to leave Konami and still make incredibly capital intensive, expensive video games. But he was kind of already a brand of his own.
Yeah, I was going to say he's definitely a difference, or he's definitely like an outlier in that thing, because people played Metal Gear, like Kojima has such a specific brand of game that he makes, and he is always pushing boundaries in the way that it's like, I mean, both like graphical. I mean, Metal Gear Solid 4 or Metal Gear Solid 5 is still, or sorry, Metal Gear Solid 4 and 5 are still some of the best looking games that I have ever played in my life, and those games came out over a decade ago now. So like, not only has he pushed technological boundaries, but he also pushes like idea boundaries in really interesting ways. So his next thing is like, oh, you're going to be playing a movie, basically, right? Like, this isn't a video game, it's an interactive movie, is kind of like his next shtick. And so, yeah, it's like Kojima's a weird one because he would have succeeded whether he was with a company or not, because people, like, he has such a weird cult following who will play anything that he makes regardless, just because it's Hideo Kojima, because he's awesome.
Sure. So, okay. So along this lines, do you see a future in which like big companies like big companies like Sony or Xbox or whatever are like struggling to make like system selling video games? Like, I think we saw that with Xbox a bit, like for a time. And then now they have the opposite problem where they have a bunch of sub publishers under them, but they're not interested in consoles anymore. So, which is kind of funny because now they're just a third party publisher. Whereas, 5 years ago, it was the opposite. And like, I think like Nintendo is interesting to think about because I think technology, I think Nintendo's probably going to benefit the most from technology because they're not on the cutting edge of technology, but they do benefit when technology becomes cheaper and more accessible. Like creating like Tears of the Kingdom and getting that to run on a Switch, for example. I think that was like a technological marvel for what that game was, and having it run on the Switch, it definitely wasn't like cutting edge, but like for something that's less powerful than a PS3 to play that, I think was extraordinarily impressive. And they're not high, like they're never going to make high end software. So like they're going to always benefit from good, not great, but good electronics becoming cheaper.
Well, what was your question?
Yeah, I was just trying to think the same thing.
I was asking you like if you see like these platform holders like Sony. I guess Sony is the only one now. I guess it's not because Xbox, we already know the answer for Xbox. They aren't interested in making hardware anymore. So it's not a question of like whether they're going to be. Okay. So the future of cloud gaming is not a threat to Xbox. It is a threat to Sony, right? Sony still wants to sell you a PS5. Sony still wants us to sell you a machine to play video games on. Xbox, it seems like they're not interested in that. And so I guess the question would be like, is this going to impact the one company that relies on good like there's only one. That's crazy. There's only one company in gaming that like relies on good hardware being like great hardware being available. That's it.
I mean, Nintendo does as well to I mean, not like great hardware, but it's like unless Nintendo decides to open up and start, you know, third partying all their games, which I would love to see. I really want. I mean, I don't know if this doesn't really answer the question, but like, I think that more people should take Xbox's stance where like, hey, maybe we shouldn't be so precious about our IPs, and maybe we should just worry like we shouldn't worry whether it's on an Xbox or a PlayStation or a Switch. We should just worry about that it's made by a good developer and it's like getting to as many people as possible. Because with like Halo's coming out on a PlayStation for the first time ever, like for the next game. And that's like, that would have been unthinkable 20 years ago. Like 20 years ago, if you said that, I would have said that you're on drugs. And I think that doing something like that with like Mario Party would be incredible. Like, could you imagine if you didn't need to own a Switch to be able to play Mario Party? You could play it on like your PlayStation. I know that sounds kind of wacky, but I think that the future should just be making games accessible to everybody instead of gatekeeping consoles. It's like we should get to a point of efficiency where you can play it on any console, and regardless of what you own, I think you should be able to play any game. I don't know. I know that doesn't really answer the question, but that's kind of what I thought.
No, it does, because I think that is the fastest way to a cloud streaming future.
I guess so, yeah, in a way.
I think keeping things exclusive to certain hardware is how you justify making like a hardware first gaming experience, right? And the thing with Xbox is that's what we're seeing, because Xbox is interested in just that, making sure their games are everywhere, making sure you can play them everywhere, and then they are also completely uninterested in the next generation of hardware. I think they talked about it being like premium and boutique. So like the next Xbox will probably not be consumer friendly as far as like price goes.
The next Xbox is just going to be a computer. Like they're just going to sell you a computer that you put in your living room. It's going to be this a Steam Machine 2.0, you know? Like,
yeah. And so I do think that like, I think the reason why I like exclusives is because I think exclusives are the only way that we continue to have hardware in the living room. Because I think like if like let's say Sony just wanted to publish, right? Sony was like, you know what, you can play The Last of Us on well, I guess you can play it on PC.
You can play it on PC.
Is this it?
Yeah.
Maybe it's inevitable. Maybe game streaming. I've changed my mind. I've changed my mind. I guess I just believe that other than like Nintendo, game streaming is just that's the future. I think in 10 years, there's going to be hardcore enthusiasts that own a physical PC in the way that like hardcore film enthusiasts own 4Ks and Blu-rays. But the vast majority of people are going to be streaming because I just think that like console manufacturers are going to lose interest. I think that's my take. This has been like a realizing something horrible.
Your argument is like it's just not going to be like economical to develop the hardware.
Yeah, I think that because right now what happens is they sell hardware at a loss, right? And then they make it up on software sales.
And you're saying that because like if any device can just run locally, like if not run the game locally, if they could just run it at a distance, you don't need good hardware and it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Which is what that's exactly what
Xbox is doing 100%.
Yeah. And so I guess like Sony making also their like you can play Last of Us on Steam. So like sure. I don't know. I just wonder if Sony will also not care as much where you play their games, and so there's no reason to sell you a computer, because a PS5 is sold at a loss.
I mean, but there's also like, I mean, currently I think the trend is exclusivity, like timed exclusivity, right? So, you know, sure. Epic Games will sign so that people only have their games on Epic Game Store for a year, and then it'll go to everyone. And then same with PlayStation is doing that with a lot of their things. So they did that. I believe Horizon is now on PC. I might be wrong about that. but they did that with The Last of Us, right? Where they have it exclusive to their consoles for a certain period of time to sell consoles, because like if you tell me Bloodborne 2 is on the PS6, I'm buying a PS6. You know what I mean? Like that. But if they're like, oh, but if you wait 2 years, it'll be on PC. I'm like, I'm not waiting 2 years to play that. Like, that's crazy. No, I'm going to buy a PlayStation 6. So I think right now, instead of like just exclusivity, I think they're kind of going for, I think timed exclusivity has kind of replaced that in a lot of ways, where it's just kind of like it's
Sure.
It's paying to go see it in the theater versus waiting for it to come to streaming service. You know what I mean? It's like, can you wait
Sure.
to play it where you already have it, or are you going to go out of your way to go do the thing because you want it day one?
Do you think there's a price point that would make streaming more attractive to you? Like, imagine you never have to update your GPU. Is there a price point that would make you be like, okay, I know there's going to be a little bit of latency, but the fact that I don't have to spend $1,500 on a new graphics processor is going to justify that for me. Do you see that being a calculation that you make in the future?
I think the barrier to entry for that, as like a serious point, like it would have to be really, really good.
Sure.
Because like I'm even thinking about, you were talking earlier about how the one game that you played with the sheep herding, you were like, it was a little framey on the PS5. That is going to be the every game experience unless it's like perfect.
Sure.
And I just like, I find it hard to believe that companies don't value the game experience enough to just like fully offload everything. But if I'm thinking about the economics of it, like I totally agree with the idea that the game publishers and developers get out of the hardware market, and maybe we just move to like generic consoles. Like everybody could just have like Steam Decks, and Steam Decks could just run everything. Or like the console market essentially shuts down in favor of like generic consoles, with all game purchases just becoming like digital, because then you don't have to deal with like physical supply lines for games as well, and you don't have to deal with like file formats, and like you just take advantage of like the existence of like Steam as a game development platform, or like every company will just have their own like app and storefront. Like Sony gets out of the physical game department and just has like, oh, the Sony launcher for the Steam Deck, where you can just play all your PlayStation games now.
I hate that.
Sure.
I hate it, but like I can see that's where it's going in the future.
Yeah. I mean, I'm at a point where I have too many subscriptions, I have too many apps, and I am actively like, if I go into a store and they're like, hey, do you want 20% off your order, but you have to download our app? I'm not going to do it, and I'm going to pay the 20% more because like, I don't want to download another app. And it's the same with subscription services, where like I've got enough subscription services. I'm like, if I want to get a new one, I have to be able to justify it or cancel an old one to be able to kind of usher it in, because I don't want more subscription services. So I think I'm in a camp where if everything went to cloud gaming, I think I would want to stay with my own physical hardware. Like Seth said, like the deal would have to be really, really, really good and enticing, because I am willing to pay the price for it being convenient and local to me, because it makes me feel like I own it. That's one less subscription that I have to have. That's one less app that I have to have. It's just like everything is available on my computer off Steam, and that's perfect. I like that. I don't want to have to add anything on top of that, because I'm very much at subscription fatigue. Like I don't want any more subscriptions. So it would have to be incredibly, like it would have to be like sub $5 a month for me to want to care about it. It would have to be something so minimal that it literally doesn't impact me at all. Like it doesn't, like it's worth the inconvenience.
See, like I wasn't even talking about subscription models. Like I was just saying like, here's just like the Sony app, and this now is like where you purchase. It's just like the PlayStation store, but it's on, to Dempsey's point about like anything can become a console now. not to that cloud computing extent, but to the extent of like, I could imagine a third-party console developer that you're buying instead of the Steam Deck, you're buying the ice porch, and
Sure.
you're buying the ice porch, which is some knockoff Steam Deck that like you can download like the PlayStation app and the Xbox app and the Nintendo app. And from the Nintendo app, you can access all of your like digital game cards that they now have for Switch 2, because it's just not worth it for Nintendo to produce the Switch hardware anymore. And it's a lot easier for them to just say like, hey, here's like, they just license out like their game software.
But isn't that just the death of physical media? You know what I mean? Like, isn't that exactly what we've been doing with movies, where we just don't care about releasing movies physically anymore? We don't care about releasing games physically anymore. Fuck your physical possessions. Everything's digital, and it can just be taken away from you at a moment's whim because a $1 trillion company decided, fuck you, you don't get to play Mario. I hate that. That's terrible.
Yeah, it sucks ass, but like, I think that's like, to your point, there's a pathway here already. And like, if a company decides like, hey, or because it seems to be what Xbox has decided is like, hey, it's not worth for us to produce the hardware anymore. Instead, we're just going to like let you play it on whatever the hell you want. Build your own computer.
I think I am the closest one to becoming a cloud streaming gamer, because I was thinking about this. Let's say my PlayStation, like, let's say I did not have my PS5, but I still wanted, like, let's say that console, right? That console was not available. I am not building a PC.
Yeah.
That's not happening. What I am doing is I am buying a low spec Mac that I can edit videos with, and that's it. And then, so I think I would. Oh my God. I am very close to this. Like, the only thing that's keeping me away from being a cloud streaming gamer is the fact that my PS5 exists as a console. But I think if the console market evaporates, I cannot see myself buying a good GPU to play AAA games. I think I am the target demographic for game streaming, which would be people who don't play competitive games, who don't play twitchy games where like input lag is going to be killer, right on that limit of human perceptibility. Like, I think you can play, like, the idea of playing God of War through streaming, like the God of War or Last of Us or even like Astrobot are just not going to be as sensitive to lag as you know. And so I think I am probably the demographic that is closest. And the only reason I'm not is because the PS5 exists. And I think going forwards, that's going to be the case for more people, especially as the Xbox gets phased out and as Xbox seems less interested in producing hardware. That's really sad. I have noticed something. This conversation has mostly been eye-opening to me and very sad.
I like my physical media too much to give it up. I don't know. I don't like the idea of the cloud. I want to own my games. I still like owning physical copies of games, despite how many games I own on Steam. I don't know. I think it'd be a really hard sell for me to.
Well, and I mean, like,
that point.
I think a good example of this, like, I don't think physical media for games is fully going away, but like, one of my favorite games is Bug Fables, the Paper Mario like, and they released like they did like a limited run of like physical copies of their game because they're like a small indie studio, so they were able to like do this thing. But even like now, you can't even get like a physical copy of a Switch 2 game. Like it just doesn't even exist, right? You get like half of the game on the little game card, and then it has to download the other half of the game.
Or they give you a box and it just has a code in it to go download it online. Apparently that's the thing that's happening. Just so sad.
So like, I think there will still be some interest in physical media, don't get me wrong, but like, I do think the hardware is going towards like everything's digital. everything is, I don't know if we'll get to the cloud computing point, but like everything's digital. Maybe everything's generic just because it like saves game companies money.
Sure. Yeah, I can see this. That's crazy.
There's like a piracy issue, but
for technology.
Like that's a separate issue, right? Of like people making it easier to like pirate games and like easier vulnerabilities into games. But like, is that, you know, the pencil pushers are running that calculation for like, is it worth it? Do we save more money by like physically making consoles versus just like, why don't we just put everything make it available for PC? Which, like, is there going to be an Xbox? Like, is there going to be another Xbox? Is there going to be like PlayStation 6, PlayStation 7? Will there be like a Switch 3? I mean, I hope not, but at least for the Switch 3. But, you know, I think that's where we're headed.
That's crazy.
So, like, are games getting better? Have we reached the technology plateau? Maybe on the consumer side, right? Like, maybe this is it. But not because, like, we've hit Murphy's Law, where, like, everything is just kind of hit its peak. We've just kind of hit, like, it's no longer economical for us to, like, build you a computer and send it to you in the form of a console. Build your own damn computer, get it from someone else. We don't care. Here's the game. Here's like, because if it's just a digital game distribution, it doesn't cost them anything, right? Like they don't have to buy space in physical stores. They don't have to actually make game cards and like load information onto them. Everything can just happen digitally. They don't have to like pay for box art.
Yeah.
So like
that's why
they just save on
sad.
all the supply line stuff for no downside, right? And they're still selling games for full price like they were back in the 90s. Everything is still $60
yeah, but that's the thing
plus.
They're still going to charge full price even though they're like, oh yeah, so we've slashed 30% of our budget, but we're going to make the game $10 more because you should all go fuck yourselves.
Well, yeah, this makes this, I guess this is the exact rationale behind like the Steam machine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like it's a PC and you can load Epic Launcher on it if you want to, or you can load Xbox Game Pass on it if you want to. And that's part of the value proposition in getting something like a Steam machine. That's wild.
Right. And I think that could just be the future of gaming is like take that value proposition and just say, all right, that's our game model. Like somebody else can figure out the hardware part.
Sure.
And we're just going to do the game distribution part. And it happens digitally, so like it's not even work for us. We just have to like develop a platform to sell it.
Yeah, and I think as network infrastructure gets better, because I think network infrastructure is going to get cheaper faster than hardware is going to get cheaper. So it does seem like expect like as more people get on fiber optic, I think it will be good enough. That's wild. I think for most people it will be. I think cloud streaming is going to take off. I know I was pretty pessimistic about it, but the more that I think about it, the more that I'm thinking with the adoption of fiber optic, I think it's going to be good enough for a lot of people and cheap enough to where paying like, let's say, I don't know, $5 a month to not have to own a gaming PC, that, you know, that's, I don't know, that might be worth it. It was sad.
It
was
is
a sad episode.
And like, I think the backside of that too is maybe like the physical consoles don't fully go away, but they finally like put them at a price point that it becomes like a luxury good. On top of the fact of like gaming already being a luxury good. But like I could see PlayStation essentially being like, hey, our intent is that like you can just kind of play our games on like your Steam Deck, but also we're selling like the next PlayStation for like $1 bazillion. Like it's just going to be like $1,200. And we don't expect any of you to buy it, except like if you really, really want to. Like, And they'll call it something to make it seem fancy, right? It'll be like new PlayStation, and it'll probably still be called the PlayStation 5.
Sure.
Because what's my example? Oh, it's like D&D and Skyrim, for that matter, right? Like Skyrim has been the same game for like 15 years.
PS5.
They essentially released a new edition of D&D, but they didn't want to call it D&D 6th edition. It's still just 5th edition.
D&D
like,
next. Or D&D 1? What is it? I don't know.
Yeah, 1 D&D.
Whatever it's called.
Which is technically 5.5. But like, they'll call it like the PS5 Super Pro edition, and it's going to be like $1,200, which is outside like the vast majority of people's price points. And they'll say like, hey, we have a cheaper option, and you can just download our app on your existing Steam Deck and play the games, or on your computer, or whatever. Like, you don't need to get this. Which, yeah, is sad, and it's like fucking obnoxious.
Stop giving them ideas. They don't need more.
They ain't listening to me.
Yeah, no. Video games will be. Yeah, the technology will allow video games to become more predatory. Is what I think.
Fuck, you're right though.
I feel like there's just a lot of room for nickel and diming customers. Yeah, in that space.
Well, because nothing's ever going to get cheaper.
Thought,
nothing's ever going to get cheaper. Like, you're like, as things become more accessible, it's like, no, they're just going to be they're just going to be more expensive because it's a new thing. Like, nothing ever actually gets cheaper. It's just a new thing that's more expensive and new and more marketable. So, I don't know. We're all just going to get broke and die, I guess. That's my final thought.
Optimistic. I think it's true, though. We are just going to get broke and die.
And if you have thoughts and feelings about that, feel free to email in overthinkinggames@gmail.com. This has been a podcast about what video games can teach us.
I don't think that's what we did today. I think we just complained about.
I think we learned a lot, actually. We learned a good amount.
Whatever you say.
This was a very nihilistic. This is like techno-nihilism.
Yeah.
What do you call this?
I like that, techno-nihilism.
Techno-nihilism
my next
is
EP.
a good. It's like techno. I don't even know how to like properly describe what techno-nihilism would be.
Follow us on as we're talking about techno-nihilism. Follow us on TikTok.
Yeah, that's some techno-nihilism right there.
And Instagram and YouTube. Our YouTube videos have visuals that correspond thematically with what we're talking about. The specificity of which depends on how ambitious I am feeling while editing it. But at the very least, we'll show some visuals. So check us out on YouTube if you want. Otherwise, thanks for have a good happy gaming. Thanks for joining us.
Let's wrap it up.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.